Hello and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO and VC podcast. And I have on the show today doing the pod from the car. I love that. Anything goes on my podcast. I'm welcoming to the show from Los Altos, California, Paul Rubens. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you very much, B. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. And I just love that you're out and about. And last time we connected, you were in the car and then you said to me just before, I hope it's okay that I'm doing this from the car. And I'm like, you know what? That's what it's all around, being adaptable, flexible, the beauty of having, the tech we've got where we can do, records, etc.
That's right. That's right. And I hate to be late driving somewhere and then being late. I'd rather just, park and be ready to speak with you.
Yeah, so do I. Although, you know what keeps happening to me? I've stopped now. I've got a hybrid car, right? And so I didn't realize that when I was doing meetings and turned my car off, it was sucking the life out of the battery. So
Yeah.
my car just kept stopping. It just kept dying on me. And then then I got told, B, you need to keep the car running when you are doing things with your, devices. I was like, okay, good note. Good point. Anyway.
Yeah, especially the hybrids with those small batteries. But, we adapt, we learn, we adapt. Hopefully my battery will hold up and we'll be fine.
Yeah, totally. All right, Paul. Well, let's get on into it. We've got quite the, well, how would I explain it? The cross combination, I'll call it that. In terms of we're going to delve into investment and also
hmm
sport and the interplay and the psychology
Mm,
and how the two, flow together, if you like. And I'm really
yes.
keen to have a chat about this. So you are the founder of Tamarack Investment Partners. You're a seasoned investment leader with over 2 decades of experience building and scaling investment management businesses across Asia.
Yes.
You've got this global perspective gained from living and working in the 4 Asian financial centers, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Taipei, and Singapore. And before
Thank
launching
you.
the firm 11 years ago, you played a pivotal role in developing multiple investment platforms in some of the world's most dynamic markets, which I've just mentioned.
hmm
That global perspective has allowed you to have that capital growth and long-term value creation. And it is about the value creation, right? Your
hmm
journey began you've got another arena. I won't say your journey began in another arena. You have another arena. You were and you are continuing to play tennis. You were a professional
Yes.
player. I asked you if you'd played against any of the majors, and you have. Ranked 15 plus players in the world. You're also a coach where you coach and train the younger high school students. And I think you may have come
hmm
back from that, or you've done that earlier today.
Yes.
And there's a discipline you've developed, and the discipline is, resilience, and not just resilience, but I look at it from an anti-fragile, so the ability not just to bounce back from a loss, but also bounce forward. And so that's a real
hmm
mindset. The performance
Yes.
mindset, the energy required, like to give you the energy and the clarity, if you like. And that is also ultimately underpinning how you approach your approach to investing and leadership. You said to me just before, you're nationally ranked for your age division and you love it
hmm
because of the energy and mind sharpness it gives you.
Yes.
You can
It's
start
one
wherever
of those
you
things.
like, and I'll let you
Sure. I was
do it.
just touching upon the tennis. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about my tennis game, but it is a psychophysical game in the sense that you are using your mind. You're also having to put together physical movements with a lot of thinking out there. And, it's one of those things that you can't really perfect. You're never going to really perfect your tennis game. So you could always continue to work on it and try to improve and find ways that you can improve your game. So in that sense, it's something you can commit to long term, given that you're never going to be completely done and perfect with your tennis game. So I've enjoyed it from a young age. I was a baseball player, when I was growing up, and then switched to tennis. I was very fortunate to have, an outstanding coach in Steve Stefanke, who later became the U.S. Olympic coach and the Junior Davis Cup coach. So he really helped my game and allowed me to excel during high school. Played for Santa Clara, and then played a little bit professionally before moving to Hong Kong at age 24. And when I moved to Hong Kong, I was given a guest membership at the Chinese Recreation Club. in Causeway Bay. That was a well-known club, and they had a league that they played against other clubs in Hong Kong. I was also brought in for exhibitions against the Chinese Davis Cup. They
Oh,
used
wow.
to come down and practice. They used to come down to Hong Kong. This was back in the late 80s. But the players from China were just getting going with tennis, and they'd come down to practice in Hong Kong with the four Hong Kong Davis Cup players, which we used to play practice there at the Chinese Recreation Club. So even during my work career, I kept up the tennis. While we lived in Tokyo, we had a group of non-Japanese called the Tokyo International Tennis Players, and we would go around and be the practice match for corporate matches, like even the big corporates,
Yeah.
Mitsubishi Heavy, Sumitomo Corporation, some of the other Tokyo Kaijo, and others that had really good tennis teams, and we were people that had played in college or sometimes Davis Cup players from Burma or, we had Swedish players, people that were living in Tokyo. And then when I returned to the States, I got, kept up the game and got involved in senior tennis. So the tennis, Yvonne Lendl was one of my heroes growing up, and I really liked how he separated tennis from his professional life. By the time he was at the top of his tennis game, he already knew four languages. He had studied law. He was in a business suit when he was off the court, taking care of things. He once said tennis was very good to me. Sometimes, feel that that's been the case with me. Tennis has been a good sport for me, and it's helped me throughout my life.
Yeah, it's interesting that you call out Ivan Lendl and, Ivan Lendl and his, how he separated his
Yes.
from his profession, like you said, professional from tennis. I hadn't thought about it that
Think,
way because I've always
Mhm.
thought that it's all interconnected, and yet you're calling out something completely different in terms of that he basically the tennis was one aspect, and yet he also had then another part of his identity or of his career, if you like. Can you elaborate a little bit on
Yeah,
more on
there's a lot of we see that. We see that among students, they people that continue to excel academically, but then they're disciplined enough to also excel in tennis. And I think that was Ivan Lendl. He was, a very sort of well organized kind of guy. And when you look at the way his life developed, he married a beautiful woman. They had four children. He emigrated to Connecticut, and then he's been a top coach at the top of the game. So he's stayed involved with tennis. But what he was able to do is when he's off the court, he has other aspects of his life that he's
Yeah,
pursuing.
yeah,
And that I think has been the case with me.
yeah, amazing.
But
Tell us.
all throughout those years, we also used tennis in business, and we had Korean clients that wanted to play tennis, liked the fact that I was good. I was popular with them. We also played a lot of tennis at the Tokyo Lawn Tennis Club in Tokyo, and from there, we're able to get a few corporate deals with people that we played tennis with.
Yeah. It's like I was going to segue into Tamarack Investment Partners and I guess
Yes.
the duality, if you like, in terms of, and you've just kind of landed on it in a way because it is a sport. Investment is a sport. It's a game. It's connection. It's all of that. How did
Mm,
Tamarack Investment Partners come about? You've been in business and successful for quite some
yeah.
time. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, thank you very much. Yeah, it's so I lived in Asia all those years, and in the four countries. I returned. I was with Franklin Templeton for 4 years in a sort of investment oversight role from their local investment teams in China. They were JV there. A new CIO in Japan. They had a sizable presence in Korea and India. We did some due diligence on a manager in Australia, actually, that we purchased. And I was there for 4 years, but during that time, a couple of the managers that I had known for a couple of decades from my time at Black Horse and, at Citigroup and other firms, and they both came to me and said, "Well, Paul, we're actually looking to expand into North America with getting limited partners from North America. Could you represent us there?" And that's what led me to start Tamarack. We're two of the Asia-based managers wanting us to represent them as placement agent. So we went and got our licensing with FINRA. We founded a broker-dealer, and had our licensing there. And from there, we were able to add a few more strategies. So it, started off with more consulting on retainer basis. And then once we started to make introductions to investors that were coming into the strategies, we were getting paid on a percentage of the management fee, and sometimes performance fee. And that was enough to sort of move off the retainer model and just get paid a share of the assets that we've raised for managers.
Amazing.
So we try to, one of the things that it, during my career in Asia, I was more, even though I had served in investment roles early on, most of my career was more in the business development, and I later became a COO. But I dealt with a lot of investors. And if you are talking to institutional investors or family office investors, you want to help facilitate their due diligence on you. You want to be transparent. You want to answer all the questions in a timely and complete manner. And so I like being that intermediary of helping to provide solutions to people, and then also to bridge culture sometimes,
Yeah.
but also to bridge, the investor and the manager. And sometimes there's a gap as
What's the
to
gap?
what
Well,
the
tell us.
gap would be.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
that gap because I've been talking to a lot of people in VC around
Hmm.
investor and founder. Haven't really delved into this investor manager relationship as such. From
Mm.
the investor founder perspective, at times there's a gap between the investor understanding the founder and the mindset of the founder, and the founder understanding the mindset of the investor, unless you've been a investor or an investor founder.
Right.
You mean
Right.
what's the gap when it comes to investor manager?
So sometimes there can be gaps between what an a fund manager, let's call it a fund manager, a hedge fund manager, or a long only manager, what they're willing to share with an LP, a limited partner, in terms of the research, access to the research, or even the transparency on the top 20 holdings. They may hesitate to give up their best ideas. They may feel that some of their information that they would share with the client would be actionable, or something that they could take that information and use it to benefit, and maybe to the detriment of their own portfolio. So some people are, and you can't, a lot of investors understand that, and that's why sometimes we have NDAs and other things that sometimes there are, sometimes we see that, and we have, investors willing to sign an NDA, for example. But the other one is, institutional investors often have needs for, um, more infrastructure at managers. They want to have better audit trails. They want to have good documentation for all the compliance procedures and even the investment procedures, a fully built out DDQ document that could answer every question that they might want. Whereas a startup, an emerging manager, sometimes is used to just explaining things. They may not be able to meet the needs for that, some of the institutional investors have. But that's a gap that we sometimes see that needs to be addressed. Usually, the manager needs to
Yeah.
meet the investor. The investor has very uncompromising points. They can't compromise on that. So the manager typically needs to meet those needs.
Is that a tension point in needing to meet those needs? Do you see that or like, yeah,
No, it's not a tension point, because for managers that have become eligible to be considered by those institutional mandates, maybe they're in their second or third year, they're delighted to be in the due diligence. And if they fall short and they start to lose a few of the mandates, then they'll understand that they're competing in the institutional space, and those are the demands
yeah, okay.
of
And so
those
what do you
investors.
like you've got a long career history, like an exceptional one at that. What are you
Thank
seeing?
you so much.
No, that's okay. What are you seeing as like, I guess, how much has changed from say 2 years ago to now in terms of the state of the world, everything at play, the uncertainty, unpredictability of the economic landscape, etc. In terms
Mm, mm,
of perspective, what are you seeing and what are you
yeah.
noticing? what's changed and what hasn't
Just over the
changed
last
as
2
well.
years, or maybe since the pandemic, perhaps, would be
Yeah,
another interesting comparison.
absolutely.
I think so. What we typically do is arrange road shows for managers that go and meet with investors, and investors want to meet managers in person to have a dialogue and to look at them and to ask the tough questions and see how they respond. There's a lot of belief in that you want to spend time at either their office or meeting them in person when they visit you. When COVID came around, obviously people weren't traveling as much. And I think investors became a lot more comfortable with what we're doing here, Zoom and virtual meetings. Before that, people would never say that someone would allocate money before actually physically meeting you. But we've seen how that's gone away, and we've seen how people are very comfortable with a lot of virtual, or I guess electronic communication. How would you call it?
I know what you're saying.
Over Zoom or over?
Yeah,
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 and so that was one. In terms of the last 2 years, I think what we saw in the first Trump presidency was, a lot of actions. Not all of them were predictable, and you found yourself on your heels a lot reacting. You couldn't stop the actions from happening, but you could control how you react to the actions. And that was kind of what we saw. It feels like the second term is kind of that, but more so, much more so, much more aggressive in terms of what the administration's trying to achieve in a short period of time. Problems that built up over decades, such as the immigration issue here in the States, to try to just solve that with really harsh measures and in a very short period of time is one way to go, but it's certainly not, hasn't been a popular
way to go.
approach. I think most Americans don't agree with how that has been handled. You see, some of the other more drastic approaches to getting stuff done, like the Doge movement, right? Where Elon Musk came in with his team and looked for government efficiency. There were a lot of layoffs. There were a lot of disruptions to things like USAID and other things that got impacted right away. And I think that was also, with the government shutdowns and with all the job losses, I think it was also much more dramatic, a much more fast-paced and radical amount of change in a short period of time than most Americans are used to. And now with this war in Iran, I think most Americans, well, it's hard for me to talk for most Americans, but I think a lot of people see that as unexpected, and something that trying to understand how that fits into, some longer term plan. And we kind of hope that there's a longer term plan. But in the meantime, you have, the tariff, of course, war was the other part of it. And I think that was creating a lot of uncertainty, not to mention the need to adjust to the higher prices. And it complicated things for the Fed too, because inflation was then baked in
Yeah,
to the tariffs. So all these areas, I think, are leading investors to maybe take a bit more time and evaluating what they thought may have been a good approach or area to overweight. They're taking a bit more time to evaluate and also sort of noticing the volatility that they see in asset classes and wondering if maybe they have a new perception of gold or of oil or
yeah,
of um, different different things that have done well or done poorly. And so at the same time, though, investors, professional investors that we speak to and that we deal with, oftentimes will see periods of stress as an opportunity, sort of this confidence that maybe things have overshot a little bit. It creates an opportunity when markets overshoot. So one of the things that we see is the managers that we represent do tend to pick off those opportunities. So like in a market neutral strategy, for example, where you're going long and you're going short and trying to take away the market risk, but you're relying on the skill of the manager to choose, hopefully the longs will go up more than the shorts would, go down in an up market, for example. But their performance has been outstanding this year. And yeah, the market's at an all-time high, but managers are also taking advantage of the volatility. So the professional investors, there's always some opportunity that gets created from this turmoil as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way listening to you, and it's quite the, educational session for the listeners as well in terms of just everything you're calling out and, from, telling painting a picture, telling a story since COVID. And then, I was writing down
Yes,
before, you're saying investors are taking more time, they're evaluating things. And so it came to mind that I was like, risk, like, are they becoming risk adverse? And then you say no, then the managers are coming in and being more opportunistic, if you like, in terms of, so there's this
yes,
interesting play in terms of, for me, when it comes to investors taking more time evaluating, it's almost like they're pausing a little bit more and they're noticing different perspectives in terms of, like, you called out gold, etc. And
hmm
therein lies the opportunity. And then so for me, it's like you don't need to react in uncertainty as much as you think you need to. Of course, you need to pivot, you need
yes,
to move, and so I think about all of this and everything you're talking about. It is like a game of tennis in terms of, I want to stand up and, like, be up on your toes, like you're up on your toes, like it's a volatile
yes.
game. Here you are.
Agile.
Yeah,
You have to be able to react,
yeah,
move,
yeah, yes,
adjust.
yes.
I think that's right.
there's a real sport in this, what you're talking about, right? And in terms of,
Well, the other thing is that similar to tennis, when you play poorly and you don't want to say to yourself, my serve is terrible, because then you give a subconscious, a message to yourself that your serve is terrible. You better just forget about the last serve and continue to try to hit shots. And I think you have to wake up in the next day, and just keep working. And I think for the investment professionals that we work with, the interaction between research and portfolio management in the investment decision making area, despite setbacks, and sometimes an analyst may recommend something that does poorly, maybe it failed the sell review and they had to cut loss and it went against them. The firm needs that person to come back the next day and not be shy to talk to the senior CIO and recommend again what they think is the right
yeah,
view, right? So that's resilience. I mean, I'm not an investment analyst or portfolio manager, but I've worked with so many and I've been
yeah,
on so many research calls and I see the interaction. And what I realize is there is a similarity there with tennis, is that you have to wake up the next day and just go back
and
and
play your
give it your
best.
best effort.
Yeah, be your best if
That's right.
you're feeling your worst. I do love that. Paul, I have a question for you, and it's something that I'm noticing and observing in this VC space. And I'd love to know, in particular, in what you play in, if you like, women. In women managers,
Yes.
investors, there's a real gap when it comes to female founders, females seeking funding, et cetera, and even in the VC space. What are you seeing in like in the area you're playing in?
Yes, I mean, one of the managers we represent is a woman-led firm, Carton Capital, founded by Cece Bellis, former tennis professional, and she is bucking the trend in her sector, I would say. She's the anomaly, and I think when she builds her network of VCs to source follow-on investments or to build her network for seed deals directly, most of the people she's working with are
Yeah,
men. And she has a woman-led firm herself, as well as colleagues that work with. And I think certainly she's showing that a person who has the drive, who has the intensity, all the knowledge, the domain expertise, as well as the ability to work successfully with founders and somebody that's easy to work with. These are traits that work well in the VC space. And we're seeing how well Cece has done in her first fund, with the original set of investments that she made, and now she's executing well in fund two. One of our managers in Asia as well is a woman-led firm. It's it's a lady who I worked with at Citigroup, and she has I think a lot of part of her job, since she runs a multi-manager strategy, part of her job is to evaluate other managers and to get a feeling, or you could say the women's intuition part or the EQ, the very high EQ part of evaluating managers, evaluating integrity and the honesty of the information that she's getting, and also to be skeptical and to be tough. She's learned to be very effective in recruiting other very highly talented women to
Yeah, love
join
it.
her team, and then also to play in a man's world, so to speak, and in terms of doing all the things that you might think are a little bit confrontational from time to time, or something that, making tough decisions and sort of giving bad news, this type of thing. We see that, at least in the case of my manager, they do it really well.
Yeah,
And so we love to be part of the solution, so to speak, and
I love that.
getting more females in leadership roles. I remember doing some work many years ago with a group called Girls Who Invest, and that was a nonprofit that was trying to really encourage more women in leadership
Yeah.
roles. I worked with a number of women, throughout my career in Asia, and really enjoyed those working
Yeah.
relationships.
I think you need both. I think you need a mix, right? And it's obvious there's a
Yes,
real opportunity in the VC space. And I love that you have, some of your
yes.
managers and the everything you're just talking about now. I have a couple of final questions for you. Leadership. What do you, today, right now, what do you see as the absolute requirements of a successful leader? What do you see? Well, what do you believe they are?
Absolute requirements of a successful leader. I think it's probably a realization that you really can't do it by yourself. And, you need to build a team. You need to put opportunities in front of your team and, give them goals and convey that you want them to be part of the success. Nothing's going to make you happier than to see others in your organization achieve their personal goals and share in the firm's goals. So I think you do need to really be team focused. And I think some of the other things, though, is that in this age where it's a bit of over information and there's always a
Over.
lot of choices, a lot of choices to make, a lot of decisions to make. I think a leader does need to be, decisive in that sense,
Agreed.
but then also, be able to measure and evaluate decisions and do sort of postmortem analysis, not be afraid of going back, doing some attribution, looking at, the decisions we made and being humble enough to say, this set of decisions, we had a lower probability of success. Let's look at that more closely and be a bit more humble. But so I think those are maybe a couple of traits.
Yeah, I love it. You called out a few things. I think, you've also got to be match fit in terms of you've got to have the energy, on the low days and know when to kind of recover. And then on the high energy days, know when to kind of, play your best. And for me, it's like it's energy, it's mindset, it's the ability to be decisive and do it with you called out the word humble. I also think that there's a bit of empathy required as well in terms of that leadership for your team and everything else. Last but not least, Tamarack. Just
Sure.
tell us, how did the name come about? I'm curious because you said Andre Agassi and Steffi Graf, they've got a
Oh,
Tamarack
yes.
something. Yeah, so tell us quickly how Tamarack came about, the
Sure.
name.
Well, for me, so, I lived in Asia all those years, and I grew up in San Carlos, California. And Tamarack is a North American larch, a tree, but it's also the name of the street in my hometown that bordered the back of my elementary school and then the church on the other side of the street. So that street reminded me of home. And so I wanted to choose that as the name of the company. I like the fact that it's a North American larch, and I moved back to North America, so that's good. But it's really a call out to my hometown, San Carlos, California, and some of the happy memories I had,
Yeah.
in grammar school.
Yeah, coming back to your roots. I love it. Paul, how do we find
Mhm.
out more about Tamarack Investment Partners? How do we find out more about you?
Sure. Yeah, we have an Instagram, at Tamarack Investment Partners. There's a few insights there. We talk about some of the thought leadership, I guess, thought thought ideas like the startup continuum within the hedge fund space, the multi-strat versus multi-local type of strategies. So the Instagrams, right? And then for my website is Tamarack Invest, and my email is paul@tamarackinvest.com. That's
I love it.
Tamarack. And so please reach out if you'd like to talk about your fund, or if there are people that are interested in finding top performing Asia-based managers, or in some of the niche areas like in sports health tech with our Cardin Capital. We're always ready to talk to people, and
Love
delighted
it.
to hear from you.
Paul, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed our conversation. So many nuggets, so
Me as
many
well, B.
insights. Yeah, and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.